Welcome back to another episode of Independent Thought. I am your host, Desmond Price, and for today, we are having our third discussion panel, debate panel. What am I calling these things? Fresh faces, help me out with this. What am I calling these things?
I always call them debate panels.
I'm calling them a debate panel. Okay, so we are having our third debate panel. This is my first one exclusively on YouTube. So for all of you YouTube subscribers out there, thank you so much for being here. First and foremost, I'm going to introduce all of my panelists for today's episode. I'm going to start over here to my right. I'm going to introduce Zach, the host of the Plaid Jacket Philosopher podcast, making his second appearance on Independent Thought. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I'm hoping that nobody hears my kids screaming in the background, but yeah, I've tried to do my best to limit the noise in here. But yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to do one of these. I like listening to them, so it'll be fun to be part of one.
Excited to have you on here. Always going to get some new people in here. We are now also introducing Erlene Elise Mango. How are you doing today? The host of the Shall We Proceed podcast. You're the host of how many podcasts are you hosting now?
We're not going to discuss how many, but Shall You Proceed and I Made This Bed podcast. Hello, welcome everyone. Yeah, like it's my show. Yeah, I do a lot, but I'm happy to be here. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, she is also making her second appearance on the podcast. So thank you again for being back on today. And also Rashida Green, making her second appearance on the podcast, the first time in a year. Thank you for coming back on the show. How are you doing today? Host of the Crossroads podcast.
I'm doing very well, Desmond. Thank you for having me on your program.
Thank you so much for coming back. And finally, Fresh Faces, New Ideas, our resident panel co-host? Not co-host, no, just person who's been on a lot of these panels, making his fourth appearance now. How are you doing today?
Are we not counting the one that didn't happen?
No,
but yeah, I'm like semi-permanent. I hope to be always permanent, unless somebody else asks me, and then I'll have to figure it out. But yeah, I am. I'm good. I'm happy to be here. I always enjoy talking to people. Always.
Hey, so we are excited to have everyone here. Thankful my panelists for being here. Before we get started, I just want to say, if you have not already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you can support the show and support us doing more panel episodes like this in the future. So now I want to get started right in with this. Our first topic for today's episode involves sex work and whether or not it should be legal across the board. So this conversation kind of comes on the heels of what happened about a month or so ago when OnlyFans went ahead and they were going to ban all pornography on their sites. They then went back a few days later and changed their opinion and decided to allow it to continue. And this was after they said they were receiving pressure from credit card companies and from banks. They said specifically that banks like JP Morgan and Bank of New York actually blocked payments from them for the content that they had on their sites, as well as there have been conversations going back even a year or so ago when presidential candidates Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren called for decriminalizing all of criminal offenses in regards to prostitution. So the question that I have here, and I'll kind of open this up to however you want to take it, whether you want to go the prostitution angle or the OnlyFans angle. Should there be so many restrictions on sex work in America, around the world? Why or why not? I'm going to open this up actually first to Erlene, if you want to start off with this conversation. What do you think should be how we treat sex work in America?
Thank you for picking me to go first. I feel that I don't have a definite on the feeling of it because there's so much gray with it and it's so dangerous because it's not regulated. But I like the fact if we legalize it, it takes back ownership of the woman and control, right? But with everything else going on with the trafficking and all of that, I don't really know if I would want to legalize it. But I also don't agree with it being an OnlyFans with the selling of sex and the pornography. So I'm really not sure yet how I feel about it. I would, if I legalize it, I like the fact that it brings it back to the woman because everything happens to her. The charges are heavier on her, all of that. But yet the advantage taken on women right now who are in this industry, it brings it back to if I want to do this, I can do this, not that you're forcing me, if that makes any sense.
Okay. I'm going to throw it over to Zach now. What are your feelings on this issue? Do you believe that we should be having so many restrictions around sex work?
I don't think so. I mean, I think, and again, this is like, who knows about unknown repercussions that come with this, especially when it comes to the trafficking, I think is obviously the scariest and darkest part of it. But if you did at least decriminalize it, or legalize it, I think that you're at least going to be able to give protection to the women involved in it, and take that power ideally out of, the I don't know, whoever's the handlers of them and that kind of stuff. Like, hopefully you can take power away from them. They'll be able to kind of take it back themselves and be in control of their own. Well, at that point, it would be considered a business, so they'll be able to have control of that. As far as OnlyFans, I mean, I think that ultimately they just crumbled because they all of a sudden lost a ton of money, and that's the only real factor for OnlyFans pivoting on that. I don't think it has anything to do with any morality or anything like that. It's just they were going to lose all of their customer base. So I don't know. To me, I think that people should be able to do what they'd like with their body, and that includes, even if it's something you don't personally agree with, they should have that right to, and they should be protected under the law. They should be able to, be afforded the same rights as anybody else doing any kind of entrepreneurial work.
Okay, thank you for that. And now I want to start with Rashida. You are next. What are your thoughts on whether or not sex work should have as many restrictions as it does currently?
Well, I don't believe that sex work should be criminalized. Obviously, the largest impact, as we've all kind of touched on, are to the actual partakers, not from the partakers themselves, but the women who are, or the men as well, who are engaging in the activities or the sex work itself. And so, as long as it still kind of remains this hidden thing or this taboo, it makes it easier for those, not all, but some people to induce harm or cause harm. So if we're going to change anything, I mean, that's to the purpose. And I know that sex trafficking is a major, major problem, especially here in the state of Maryland. It's horrifying, the amount of sex trafficking that occurs here. But I think we have to still be able to begin to have that conversation and kind of separate those things out a little bit, as best we can, so that we can actually target the folks who are perpetrating and obviously engaging in human trafficking, and those that actually just want to be able to have their entrepreneurial right, to work. So
Absolutely. And for our final opening statement, Fresh Faces, New Ideas, what are your thoughts on this? Should there be more restrictions on sex work?
No, I mean, it should be legalized. It should be it shouldn't be, regulated in the same way, because in the way that we do it now, it's like regulating morality. And we don't need to be doing that. It's part of the reason why we no longer why gay marriage is legal, because it was regulating morality. And also it's safer. It's safer for the women to have the ability to go to the police if they are being abused. It's safer for, if you have sex trafficking, it's safer for you to do that and not have to worry about being charged. There was that story. I don't remember if this is still being litigated. There was a 16-year-old girl, I believe she was, who was being sex trafficked, and she killed the guy who was trying to rape her. And then they charged her with being a prostitute when they went to the police. So it's safer for all the people involved, except for those who are already doing things like sex trafficking, which is already bad. So it doesn't hurt anybody who isn't already breaking the law.
Okay, so when I was first looking up this conversation, I came across a video that NBC had did. This was about a year and a half ago, and they interviewed two different people. They interviewed two people who were both involved in sex work. I think one was in an escort service, and the other one used to be involved in prostitution. One of them had said that she thought that sex work of all kinds should be completely decriminalized because she thought it was in fact going to make it's safer for everyone involved. Now, the other person said that she thought that it should continue to be what it currently is, because she thought that if it was decriminalized completely, that it would enhance the amount of sex trafficking that goes on, saying that there will always be more buyers than willing sellers. So now I'm going to kind of open this up a little bit here. I want to throw in the fact that when MasterCard and Visa suspended their suspended their contracts with Pornhub last year, they were citing similar reasons that Pornhub, for instance, was having too many instances of, women, young women who were on there who were victims of sex trafficking. And that was the reason why they suspended their just like payment processing of Pornhub, to which they still have not gone back with them. So now I'm going to open it up for open discussion here. Is that a concern whatsoever? I mean, is keeping it where it is right now illegal? Is that going to prohibit, or I guess like de-emphasize the amount of sex trafficking that we're seeing across the country, around the world, really?
No. I mean, it just hasn't. And as for the Pornhub thing, they like nuked their site. The way they did it, the only way Pornhub works now is if it has to be like a verified account from either the actress, or I believe the company that there's like verified companies that do this, and that's how important. So I think if in that way, the issue would be for those processors to go back and check to see that they're following up with whatever their due diligence is, to make sure that those type of things are happening. It's that look, if the banks want to do that as a way of leverage to try to stop this issue, I'm fine with that if it ultimately leads to safer sites. But I think saying, making it illegal will stop sex trafficking, I mean, do we have historical evidence to show that it hasn't?
And I think that the laws regarding kind of minimum age are completely separate from the laws regarding sex work, in my opinion, anyway. That's obviously important to make sure that everybody's of age. That's should be the utmost importance. And that's awesome that Pornhub did nuke their site and take care of that way. I didn't realize how that had all settled out. But then, I mean, yeah, sex work, it's often referred to as the oldest profession in the books. Like there's no way around it. I don't think. I think that it's always going to be there. So I don't think by it being, if we made it legal, I don't think it's going to increase demand. I think it's just going to hopefully increase the safety of those involved in doing it.
Here's the thing. The reason why it will probably never be legalized, let's rip the Band-Aid off. The ones who are truly engaging in it do not want to be exposed, because once it's legal, it's going to be public information, and you're going to be able to see clientele, whatever. You can have privacy stuff, lined out, but there's going to be more access to who is actually hiring these workers, who is actually trying to engage in certain things they shouldn't be engaging in. And many people who are probably wealthy, political, do not want it legalized, because once it's hidden, you have the leverage of keeping it quiet financially if you're paying for certain things you want done. So we can talk about this, but we all know that when it comes to trafficking, prostitution, and where the depths of the ugliness is, it's going to stay that way, because they'll be too much exposed if you make it legal. If I'm wrong, please disagree with me. But all that other stuff, that's fine. But I don't think it'll ever happen, because once you start finding out or realizing what you're paying for, what you're having to do, and you're realizing who's engaging in these things, they don't want that being exposed.
I think that's a great point.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. But the way to deal with that realistically, at least in a society that pretends to be a democracy, would be to move the needle of the populace in order for them to be more accepting of that. Because look, it's not like these things are happening. I think there was just a story today. Now, I don't know how accurate this is, because I haven't had a chance to verify it. But there was so I'm not even bringing it up, but like we hear stories all the time of anti-abortion politicians having abortions, having their mistresses get an abortion. This is just because they're afraid of it. I mean, as long as you keep pushing for it, and then there's going to be, this is actually one of the positives to hacking. There was that, what's the name of that site? There was that one site where they let you like hire mistresses on the down low, and it got hacked.
Was it?
Oh, I know
Adam
what you're
and Eve?
talking
Yeah.
about.
It wasn't Adam and Eve, but it was something like that.
With the I can't remember what it's called, and I have
right, but everyone knows what I'm
Like
talking
Ashley
about.
Madison.
That's it.
Actually,
Ashley
that was
Madison.
it. That was it.
Yes.
It's a shame
Like,
that I know
like
that.
things like that, or like that's a positive to show who does this. Because the goal, I guess, you're right. Realistically, the real barriers to it are the people who are trying to legislate morality, which you're really never going to get rid of because those people have been around forever and will remain around forever. And then it's the people in power who have something to lose from that. So the goal is to pressure those people to do the right thing. And eventually, you'll have enough of a majority that either they're forced to do this or you can overwhelm them by getting them voted out of office to push it. But you have to first move the populace's ideology and make them more accepting of that idea. It's the same way we did it with gay marriage. It's kind of working with marijuana. It'll, there's other topics where it's working like that.
Yeah,
All right.
I tend to agree. Yeah, I think there's really we just have to really kind of keep moving the needle. And I would say decriminalizing is a crumb on the road, because there's a difference, as I'm sure we'll probably get into later, between that and actually making something legal. So I think that there's room, and we just have to, whomever the folks that are involved in the movement will just have to continue to try to move the needle forward.
All right.
And one other quick point too, if we're going to complain about the child sex trafficking, currently 44 states in the U.S. allow for child marriage, which is anything under 18. I think North Carolina just raised theirs to 16. So if we're going to really complain about child sex trafficking and child exploitation, we should be taking a look at those type of laws. And probably beauty pageants for children are, that might be a bad idea as well. Like what exactly are you willing to draw the line on? Like,
You're choosing violence.
you have to call these both things out, because if you're like, okay, well, I'm worried about the children. Okay, then let's stop having them married at 14. Let's, or Texas is a great example. I'm worried about the children, so they can't wear a mask, but if they get raped, they have to carry the baby. Like, it's, what exactly is your morality? And that is the issue that we're going to run into, is the people who are trying to realistically legislate morality.
Okay.
But the reality is that they can't legislate morality. And the other side of that is that they're not really trying to do that. It's more about using morality as that sense of level of control. It's just using it as an extension of the state.
Yeah. And
all right,
eventually, we can ultimately, the dominoes fall. It's all, and look, the advantage of this is I'm clearly younger than everyone else here. Is the advantage of this is
come on now.
All right, I apologize. I look younger. I can. All right, I apologize.
I think you're digging yourself worse here.
Yeah.
Let's just
all right.
move on.
Let me say this:
Done.
younger generations than me and everyone else. The younger generation, the Zoomers and whatever the generation after them is going to be more progressive. It's just the way it has been, and the advantage of that is we're the generation that could start the building blocks. Because the generation in power is generally the baby boomers, and they have 2 national elections basically left in power. They're all geriatric at this point. So you start laying the groundwork in, you start getting more of the politicians who are talking about these things, and then the younger generations are like, hey, I don't see what's wrong with this, and that's how we start the stepping stones.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like that's a great transition into the next topic there, Desmond.
It is a perfect transition into the next topic. We are going to be going into our second topic for this conversation, which is